Hello, everyone, and welcome to the How Does It All Fit? Provincial Organizations Owned and Operated by the Colleges webinar. A few housekeeping items to mention before we get started with today's webinar. All attendees are on mute. If you have a question for me or today's webinar speaker, please send it through the questions section on your GoToWebinar dashboard, or you can use the Raise Your Hand feature to ask your question verbally. You can access the question chat box by clicking on the plus sign next to the question header on the dashboard. To access the Raise Your Hand feature, click on the hand icon that is also located on the left side of the GoToWebinar dashboard. We will then unmute your line, and you will be able to ask your question. All questions regarding the presentation content can be asked throughout the presentation, or you can ask it at the end for the Q&A. Without further delay, I would like to introduce our presenter, Don Sinclair. Don is the founding Chief Executive Officer of the College Employer Council. The Council's mission is to support Ontario's colleges of applied arts and technology through the best practices in responsible collective bargaining, group insurance benefits, and human resources matters. Without further delay, let's begin. Don?
Thanks very much, Anne, for that introduction. I trust you can hear me okay?
I can, Don.
Okay, that's great. Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for, joining me on your lunchtime. Maybe we call this Lunch and Learn. Today, what we'd like to talk a little bit about are the college entities that the colleges own and operate at a provincial level. And so I'm going to take you through, I would say, a bit of a high-level presentation into the different organizations. And I'm going to delve into a couple of them in particular, both Council and Colleges Ontario, and then talk briefly about the other entities as well, because you'll hear about these in your journey in the colleges. So first of all, Anne was gracious enough to send out to you the attached structure. You may not have had a chance to print it off, but while this looks like a fairly busy chart, I think it's a good representation of the different structures that we have in colleges in particular. So in this particular slide, I'm sure if you can see my arrow, essentially in this structure, right in the centerpiece is essentially the dominant organization, Colleges Ontario, and I'll be talking about them in a few minutes. And there are a number of operating entities, as you'll see down here in the blue, and I will go through those fairly quickly. And then there's the College Employer Council over here on the far left. So very quickly, when you look at these entities, and by the way, we'll talk about the subcommittees in Colleges Ontario, which are represented in the green as well. So what's a little different about the College Employer Council is the College Employer Council essentially is a not-for-profit statutory corporation. And so we are a separate organization where when you look at the other operating entities, they kind of fall under the umbrella of Colleges Ontario in the terms of the fact that they kind of at arm's length, but do report into the Committee of Presidents. And so you'll see this more clearly when I talk a little bit about the governance structure. So let's deal with the College Employer Council. It's a not-for-profit statutory corporation that started operations in 2010. In its previous iteration, Council was a Crown agency. And in about 2008, as a result of the College Collective Bargaining Act review by the government, one of the decisions the government made was to create this agency where the colleges would own and operate the council. So when you go back and you take a look at this structure, you'll see that we report into somewhat the college boards, but the College Employer Council Board of Governors By legislation, it's comprised of 24 board chairs and 24 presidents. So essentially, that's who I report to. And it's a mandatory employers association. In other words, each college, while they are an autonomous employer, have mandatory membership in the College Employer Council. Essentially, our mandate is to act as the bargaining agent on behalf of all 24 colleges. I know we went through a tough work stoppage there in the fall, and currently we've just embarked on starting to negotiate with the part-time support staff. It'll be our first contract with this group, and we have about 20 days of bargaining scheduled over the next 4 months. And what's interesting about a first contract is there's no real expiry date, but both parties are working towards getting a fair and reasonable agreement for the part-time group. In addition, council is I'll use the word, is a contract policyholder for all the benefits in the system. So in, I guess, HR lingo, we're a multi-employer benefit plan, but it doesn't matter whether you work at Conestoga, George Brown, Northern, the benefit plan is the same for administration. If you go to admin, same in support staff, and the same in the academic. By and large, the three plans are almost the same altogether. I think the big significant difference is that the academic pay for their own LTD premiums, and in this past year, support staff asked for catastrophic drug coverage, wherein the employee will be paying that premium. But other than that, the dental and extended health plans, et cetera, are fairly the same. In addition, we provide guidelines within committee structures on administrative compensation, along with presidential compensation in terms and conditions of employment. Now, you may be aware that in the last year or so, well, I'm not sure about the last year or so, but the colleges, the executives have been in a freeze for a number of years. In the last year, the government has introduced executive compensation frameworks, and so public sector employers are working through different government agencies to get their executive compensation frameworks approved. Where we are in that is that hopefully once we have a new government in place, colleges will be able to post their plan in the near future and move on with that. Council helped with that executive compensation structure. Rather than having 24 colleges reinvent different structures, we worked through a template that would assist the colleges. As well, we provide a broad range of services on human resource matters, and we're also responsible for the sector oversight on the CAT pension plan. Very quickly, I get a sense of our governance structure, and so all members are required to be a mandatory member of the employer council. As I said, 24 board chairs, 24 presidents. The board chair of CEC happens to be a college board chair as prescribed by legislation, and that's Michael Adamcrick from St. Lawrence College. And our vice chair is a president from one of the colleges, and in this case it's Chris Whitaker from Humber. And essentially, my executive is the management board, which you just see right here in the middle. So I report to them on a regular basis, and essentially on the day-to-day activities of council, budget, meeting, strategic plan, etc. The Human Resource Steering Committee is comprised of 9 presidents, some senior finance officer, senior academic officer, a couple of HR people, and the bargaining chairs and vice chairs of different teams. And the Human Resource Steering Committee essentially approves the bargaining mandate that we use in bargaining. And then you have various working committees underneath steering committee. So in our benefit plans, we have joint insurance committee with OPSU. We have employer relations committees across the different bargaining units. And so they work through committee structure as well. Every board has an audit committee, so that's not unusual to see here on the right. And then we have a Governor's Review Committee, and you notice there's a bit of a dotted line there. So the Governor's Review Committee is responsible for providing recommendations on President's compensation. In addition, any changes to administrative benefits goes through Governor's Review Committee, because virtually everyone on the steering committee, if they were to approve any changes to benefits, they're in a bit of a conflict of interest. So this is done at the Governor's Review Committee, which is made up of 6 external Board of Governors. So in addition to President's comp, admin benefits, they also provide the board with any appointments to the CAT pension plan as requested. Very quickly, I wanted to touch on Council's priorities. So Bill 148, I'm sure everyone has seen that somehow impact them in their individual institutions. Not only were there changes in terms of how we calculate hours and all that good stuff. Colleges, prior to Bill 148 coming into force, there were a number of pieces that the colleges were not, what's the word I'm looking for? They were exempt from. So colleges were exempt from vacation pay. They were exempt from statutory holiday pay. They were exempt from the need to record hours, track hours, etc. That all changed on January 1. Now that didn't mean that your college wasn't paying vacation pay and stat day. That would vary by practice, and so each college would do that differently. And I'm particularly talking in the non-union groups, whereas in the unionized groups, they had negotiated vacation pay and statutory holiday pay. In addition to Bill 148, there's the equal pay for equal work provisions, which colleges are working through as I speak. In addition, out of bargaining from the fall, we've created this provincial task force through the government, and they're looking at, as it says here, staffing models and precarious work, accessibility and student success, including mental health, funding, academic governance, and intellectual property. That task force has been underway since February. Currently, as a result of the election, in the government world, in the OPS, because the writ's been dropped, they go into what I call a silent mode, or I'm not sure what our term to use, but any of these types of committees, they don't work during that time. There may be some research conducted by the staff at the government, but it's currently on hold until the resumption of government, which will be after the election. These were issues that arose out of bargaining, and we're hoping that with the help of the government, the research that's being done in our colleagues' OPSU, that we'll have some evidence-based information to help in decision-making down the road. I talked to you about also executive min compensation. I'd also mention to you briefly that we have just started up negotiations with part-time support staff. In addition, sustainable benefits is always important. Council just undertook a review and redesign of our retiree benefit plans. These will come into effect in February 2019, and it really is to ensure that our retiree benefits continue to serve our retirees well. That went through a joint insurance committee and up through Human Resource Steering Committee. And so it's to ensure that we can also control our costs, but at the same time provide our retirees with good levels of benefits. Those benefits are all 100% retiree paid. And last is leveraging our knowledge across the 24 colleges. Clearly, there's an opportunity with council as being in the role that we're in is to share system-wide HR knowledge and best practice, and also assist colleges. We also, with Colleges Ontario, provide training and support for college boards in the CCVE program. One aspect about council that you may wish to be aware of is that we have this act called the College Collective Bargaining Act. It actually provides a process about how we go about doing our bargaining. In addition, it also calls for the creation of council. So as I indicated to you, we're a not-for-profit statutory corporation, so it describes the council within that legislation. In the legislation, it talks about 4 statutory bargaining units. So we have the full-time academic, full-time support staff, part-time support staff, and part-time academic. So the full-time and part-time support staff are both unionized. Part-time support staff just recently unionized in January of this year, hence our new bargaining on that front. Everyone knows that the full-time academic is unionized. On the part-time academic, there is a certification application before the Labor Relations Board. There was a vote conducted last fall. Council is working with the Labor Relations Board and OFSU to see if they have met what we call the 35% threshold. In our College Collective Bargaining Act, it requires that the union organizing this group has to meet 35% of the membership criteria in terms of cards signed. So we're working with the Labor Board on doing that count to ensure and satisfy ourselves that they are following the process as outlined in the College Collective Bargaining Act to ensure that they can represent that group. I suspect, from a timing perspective, that could take 6 to 12 months for that to work its way through, and it's just the size of it's a large file. If you think about what's happened in our sector over the last few years, in the academic sector, we've had a number of strikes. Previous to the one we had in 2017, the previous one was in 2006 that lasted for 19 days. This one lasted for 5 weeks. Support staff, their last strike was in 2011. We signed a 4-year deal with the full-time support staff in the summer of 2017. And that contract will come due in September of 2022. I think that's kind of a quick roundup or summary on the council. I may just stop there for a moment and pause and just see if there are any questions. Okay.
I'm going through the list. I don't think we have any questions right now, Don.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Next is Colleges Ontario. So if you, let me just go back here. If you go back to that diagram, so here we are. So we're going to talk about this group right here, Colleges Ontario, and a little bit about the affinity groups. So Colleges Ontario is a not-for-profit organization as well, but it's the Advocacy and Marketing Association for the Ontario's 24 publicly funded colleges. So maybe just to understand a little bit, the difference is that it's a voluntary organization. In other words, a college can elect not to be a member, but I mean in my 25 plus years in the system, the colleges have all been members of this particular organization. So, for some of you that may have been in the private sector, think about it, a college as a trade association. And so essentially what they do is they advocate and they market the colleges in Ontario. They've had various marketing campaigns that they utilize both within Colleges Ontario and through Ontario College Application System, which I will get into in a very short while. If you take a look at this diagram, Linda Franklin is the CEO and president of Colleges Ontario, and her board is made up of a committee of presidents. And so she has a board of 24, I have a board of 48. Council This board is meets 3 times a year. It's a fairly, I call it, run it more like a corporate board due to the nature of the business that we deal with. Committee of Presidents meet about 6 times a year. And of course, both boards set the strategic plans for the organizations. Underneath the Committee of Presidents in the green, you'll see that there are a number of system committees. And so at some point in your role as administrator, these committees will touch on you. So we have the, starting on the left, the Administrative Services Coordinating Committee. This essentially is kind of like, for lack of a better word, the CFOs, the VPs of finance, and they have a number of other provincial committees that report to them. So it would be purchasing, the directors of finance, and various ones in that group, facilities, payroll, etc. Next is the Human Resource Coordinating Committee, and it's made up of all the senior human resource officers in the system. And together, you'll have the, it's called CCHRD, the Human Resource Development or PD group that reports into them. And then you've got the Coordinating Committee in the middle there, the Vice Presidents of Student Services. So you'll have various heads like counseling, financial aid, registrar, all those things, that the disability committees, all those groups that you would associate under student services that report into that group. And then next, the Coordinating Committee for Vice Presidents Academic, and they've got a lot of committees, and generally they are a function of the different programs in colleges. So you'll have the heads of business, heads of technology, heads of apprenticeship, etc. You can just, as the schools go down. And then the last group on the far left is the Workforce Development Coordinating Committee, and it deals with various groups in terms of the college sector for Ontario employment, along with some workforce applications that they have in the various colleges. If you have, some of you may have some entrepreneurial units, and you'll see a lot of them in the Workforce Development Coordinating group. All of those committees feed up into the strategic committees and task force and the coordinating committee in particular, and it basically functions as a lot of information. A lot of good provincial work is done in these subcommittees, and I suspect at some point you'll be on these provincial committees. Aside from the networking opportunities, it does give you insight as to what's happening across the other 23 colleges in terms of their particular field or particular subject area that you may be part of. So, in addition to marketing and advocacy, Colleges of Ontario has a very strong research and policy development. And as I talked to you a little bit, all the information coordination is a function of those affinity groups that we just talked about, and PD. In terms of PD, there are two pieces that both Council and Colleges of Ontario work together on. One's the College Centre of Board Excellence, so that anyone that is in a senior leadership position or any board member, we do governance training on an annual basis. That involves workshops at the Higher Education Summit, along with webinars throughout the year. And this past year, we just started the College Leadership of Excellence. It's a piloted program where we're leveraging some of the webinars used in the governance, along with more PD for leaders that want to consider senior leadership positions in colleges, such as college financial leadership, change management, working with boards, how do boards work, fiduciary obligations of boards, and so it gives some insight for those that are contemplating that in their next career path. So what's the benefit of advocating together? Well, first of all, colleges rely on a significant amount of government funding and policy decision making. And while I appreciate that funding has gone down over the years, because Ontario, I think, has the lowest per capita funding in post-secondary education, we all work on it. And so when you think about our sector, we have 24 colleges. We all compete for students. We compete for talent, for human resource folks. And we compete for financial resources. And there are some areas where, in our competitive environment, that it's helpful when we speak with a single voice. So one of the challenges that we have, and if Linda Franklin was here, she'd say this, is that there are not many decision makers or policy analysts at Queen's Park that went to college. And so, I mean, even part of the job, even at myself at Council, and Linda at Colleges Ontario, is educating the ministry folks about colleges in particular, about how we operate, and to help them understand our needs, both from a funding perspective and a policy perspective. We're also a lot stronger when we have one voice. The other aspect about advocating together is it allows the colleges to put funds together for marketing. And so some of you may have seen over the years marketing by Colleges Ontario for colleges, for people to come to college in Ontario. And so they usually have a marketing campaign that goes every 2-3 years, and is very effective in branding Colleges Ontario. What are some of Colleges Ontario achievements the past year? They managed to get deferred maintenance ramped up. Deferred maintenance is a bit of a sore spot if you were to talk to any of your CFOs or facility folks, but they've increased deferred maintenance. Colleges are 50 years old, and we have an aging fleet of buildings, as they say. We got additional money for funding an apprenticeship. Some of you may have heard about the eCampus and Ontario Learn model. We got money supported for approach and funding there as well. I'll talk a little bit about that on Ontario Learn. Additional funds for mental health. And of course, we had that sector-wide sexual violence policy, and that was initiated by the government for all the post-secondary education to implement. And there's another good example of where you have structures like Council and Colleges Ontario that can provide collaborative effort and doing templates as opposed to 24 colleges trying to do it 24 different ways. In addition, Colleges Ontario is currently working with presidents. They developed an election platform that they're utilizing throughout this election when our folks get a chance to talk to candidates to ensure that our message is coming through to the respective parties. I'm going to stop there. If there's any questions on that. Okay. So, hearing none, I am going to talk briefly about these other entities along the bottom here. And, I mean, if they are of further interest, you can clearly just hop on their website to learn more about them. So all these operating entities each have their own board, and at least one president sits on that board along with others. So, for example, for OCASA, in addition to one or two presidents that sit in that board, you'll also have registrar, VP student services, etc. And essentially, while they don't directly report to the committee of president, because we do have presidents on these boards, they do report regularly to the committee about what's happening in those respective boards. You may have heard about the Ontario College Application Service. The Ontario College Application Service is located in Guelph, and it essentially is a not-for-profit corporation created by the colleges in Ontario, and it was created to provide a centralized application to college service in English and French, so that through its applicant website and a centralized data warehouse of applicant information for colleges, high schools, and the government. So it is the hub, so that rather than have 24 colleges doing their own registration, it provides a central clearinghouse for all students to come through. They pay X number of dollars to apply to 5 colleges, and of course it works right through that and has been very effective in managing colleges registration on that front. In addition, they do have some data warehousing, and so that colleges, when they're analyzing where their applications are coming from, within catchment area, all that type of stuff, it allows them to do some more, I call it analytics, that they may use in helping them with their marketing. If you were to go to their website, it's really student focused about where to apply, when to apply, et cetera, et cetera. The CEO is Karen Creditor, who has been with them since 2013. Next one we'll talk about is Ontario Learn. Ontario Learn is, I think, one of the golden jewels in our provincial entities. And it started in 1995. And what happened was 7 colleges saw the need to make high-quality online education available to as many learners as possible. And essentially, they realized if they could pool their resources, they'd be able to extend their reach, offering online courses and programs to students who would not otherwise have access to it. So Ontario Learn provides flexible study times in your own space, in their own time. So essentially, how it would work, as it has from the beginning, is a college would develop its own curriculum. We'll call it Business 101. It would share that curriculum with Ontario Learn, and that curriculum could be offered through any college via Ontario Learn. So I will pick on a college, and so you can understand how it works a little bit. Let's say the college was developed by Lambton. So Lambton would offer up the curriculum. They would also hire the facilitator. That course would be offered at each college, call it Business 101, at Algonquin Northern. The student would register as an Algonquin Northern or whatever student they were attending. And the fee structure is such that a certain amount of the fee goes back to Lambton for the curriculum. A chunk of money goes to Lambton for the facilitation, and a chunk of money stays with the registering college where the student is registering. So if you can see, it's a great application in collaboration how we share curriculum across the 24 organizations. Ontario Learn boasts a 90% retention rate and a student success rate of 78%. And today, in the 24 colleges, there are almost 1,200 shared online courses for 550 online programs, and they had more than 73,000 student registrations each year. Their executive director is Tracy Marsh-Fior, and of course her board is made up of different directors from the 24 colleges. At one time she had a board of 24, but recently they did a governance review, and I believe her board's down to about 8 folks that are appointed from within the college structure. So that is a little bit about Ontario Learn. Another entity is OCASA, otherwise known as the Ontario College Quality Assurance Service. So its mission is to deliver credential validation and quality assurance processes for the public colleges in Ontario, and essentially assure students, graduates, employers, and the public about the quality of our system's comprehensive programs and services. It's an independent board where there are some external folks that sit on that board. And so it's, the only way I can describe it, it's a bit like ISO 9000, for any of you that maybe have been through some of that quality assurance in the private sector. Typically, a college is audited about every 5 years on their academic programming. And if you've been through it, there's quite a bit of prep work required when colleges ramp up for OCASA. Again, you can find more information about that particular organization. Last but not least is the Ontario College Library Service. It's a consortium put together by the 24 colleges and essentially provides what I would, for lack of a better word, the ability to share resources among the colleges in how they manage the library resources, so that all colleges are not requiring either to purchase 24 licenses, etc. And so it shares some of the library content with the 24 colleges. It's a small group that works within the system. And as you know, with the world becoming very much used to internet and information available through the internet and electronic means, OCLS allows colleges to adapt to that reality in a manner that saves them money. One other organization that I'll just quickly talk about, you won't see on here, but there are some other ones, but one's called the Ontario College Athletic Association. It's not part of the CO structure. It's outside the CO structure, but it basically provides an organization for the athletic directors for them to run their varsity programming. So it does have a small board comprised mostly of athletic directors, including probably a member of the committee of presidents as well. So as you can see, folks, there are a lot of entities that are used to support the colleges in Ontario. And I know when I first started out in the system, it took me quite a while to figure it out, because I think typically when you join a college, it's your, you've pretty well got your, I'll use this, your head down and you're working away because you're new on the job. And then once you've been there a couple of years, you start, okay, what are all these provincial committees they talk about? And I'm hoping that this short information session will help you understand how the college entities work in Ontario. And I'm happy to answer any questions that may arise. If in the event you think of any questions after this webinar, you're welcome to email me at don.sinclair, SINCLAIR, @thecouncil, thecounCil.ca, and I'd be pleased to respond. So with that, subject to any questions, that's it from my end, Annie.
Thanks, Don. As Don mentioned, if you have any questions, you can ask them now. We will take your questions verbally. If you'd like to ask your question verbally to Don live on the air, just click on the raise your hand button. I will then unmute your line, and then you can ask your question to Don. If you'd like to type in your question, please do so into the question box that is also located on the GoToWebinar dashboard, and then I will ask your question for you. We don't have any questions now, Don. I just wanted to take a few moments just to remind everyone that we do have a conference coming up. The OCASA Leaders and Innovators Conference is June 25th and the 26th. It will be at the Kinbridge Center in King City, Ontario. And if you'd like to join us, visit our website. All the information is there. Our website is OCASA, OCASA.on.ca.
Just before I close off, and just to the participants, we will send this deck out for you in case you were making notes, so you can have it available.
That's right. Yes. Thank you, Don. We will send you the deck, everyone, and we also send you the recording. I'm just going through the list one more time, Don, just to see if we have any last-minute questions.
No problem.
I don't think we do. Final thoughts, Don, before we end it?
No, I just hope this has been helpful for everyone as they go about their journey and their daily lives in the colleges. And just hope, I know we're gathering into that time of year when colleges are having convocation, which is a great time of celebration to see the students that we are all here for go across that stage and on their next steps as they're going through. So anyways, thanks everyone for joining in and allowing me to spend a few moments.
And thank you, Don. On behalf of everyone on the line and OCASA, thank you so much for taking the time today. We really appreciate your insight.
Thank you.
And on that note, everyone, have a great day. We'll see you next time.